You suffer from anxiety? I have too, many, many times. And one of you actually spoke to me about it. Um, Actually, a couple of you have privately. And I want to talk about it today. I've given it a lot of thought and a lot of research. I am no definitive answer. I just want to spur your thought mobile, the brain, into thinking further. But I'm going to talk about my battle with anxiety and what it is starting to lead me to believe. Again, anecdotal evidence, but some of it with a lot of research. I have put a lot of research behind it. But I have to back up and I have to explain how it was explained to me that the brain chemistry works and how it thinks for itself. And to do that, I have to bring you back to my pharmaceutical times. 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, it was summertime. I was sick and tired of being on all these pharmaceuticals, and I wanted off of Cipralex because especially its side effects were horrible. Horrible. I did not like them. They were hurting our marriage even, which ultimately fell apart anyway. Um, but Cipralex bites on you, bites hard. It is replacing chemicals that the brain normally should produce on its own. So when I went to my doctor about reducing, I misunderstood what he said. He had told me to reduce at a very minute amount. I was on 20 milligrams per day, and he was basically telling me that I should remove about a tenth, about 2 milligrams per day per week, reduced by 2 milligrams every week, so 18 milligrams per day. You know, I didn't hear it that way, and I reduced almost completely within a week and found myself really, really sick. My I had no control. I seriously found myself parked in the mountains. And I don't want to go too deep into it, but it was a scary time. Even finding my way back was scary because I realized I didn't have a lot of control over my own thought. My brain was attacking me because of the lack of those chemicals. Now, that was my fault. I had reduced much too quickly, and my brain reacted. As soon as I got back and I put some more of that Cipralex into me, my brain realized I don't have to be in panic mode anymore, and all that anxiety, and I'm talking anxiety beyond a panic attack, beyond. But all of it went away once I put the Cipralex back in me. Then, months later, we talked about reduction again. And as soon as I started reducing, and this time by his standards, the way he did it was cut the pills up so that I could reduce to 15 milligrams at first, only 2 days out of that week, and the next week 3 or 4 days out of that week 15 instead of 20. Kind of makes it 18 a day, then 16 a day. But the moment I started reducing, I felt exactly like I did at the end of that horror show. And I called him. It was evening, and he said, get back on it. You took a reduction, get back on it. Show your brain that you're not doing the same thing again. The brain conditions itself. If it finds a situation that X, Y, and Z equals bad situation, the moment X, Y, and Z happens again, it concludes that will happen again. Regardless of these 3 steps being maybe a little bit different, they're still in sequence. The brain reacts. And by going back on it again, I retrained my brain to understand the reduction does not mean it's gone away. And I had to do that a couple of times, and it was 2 years after the situation happened that I finally had retrained my brain properly to not react poorly to reductions in Cipralex. And then I was able to really minutely, over a 4-month period, reduce from 20 to 0. 5 month. So now, why I say that, first of all, that's a warning to any of you on Cipralex. Dangerous drug, dangerous drug. Work with your doctor on it. Do not take my thoughts at all. That's a dangerous drug. But I also bring it up because the mind can be trained and retrained. The mind has natural reflexes or thought patterns that it does itself, deducing logical things to do in case X happens. Reactions to actions. It knows what it should do in most cases, and it trains itself. How does that fit with anxiety? This is something, after really working on it, I found myself, last summer I had a real sativa summer. Although some things were changing in my life, none of it felt overpowering. None of it felt like I couldn't make ends meet or anything like that. And I had a fairly good summer, even though there were some troubles. And I was smoking sativa, which some say causes anxiety. And I want to point out, I did learn that in Australia, sativa is the main thing. Indica, very hard to find. It's the total opposite in Canada. In Canada, unless you got medical, you're likely not to find a sativa plant. I never had sativa for longest time until I got my medical card. Back to what I'm talking about. So therefore, I was having sativa all the time, but no anxiety. Along comes my life getting a little more difficult, a little more, and my own internal anxiety issues start to raise. Then I start noticing that the sativa is causing me anxiety too. So I cut the sativa off and I go strictly for the indica, and go for sleepyhead kind of pot. I went most of the winter without any sativa and even shying away from sativa leaning hybrids. But then I started to kind of put two and two together. First of all, my anxiety was getting more and more and more. Yet I've cut back on the sativa or off. Something wasn't right. So I started realizing my anxiety, some of it was being caused just strictly from the facts of the sativa plant itself. Now, this took some study, and I shared this with somebody. I don't have the words anymore, I can't remember, but anxiety is always preceded, especially panic attacks, preceded by warming of the body and increased heart rate. Sativa, most sativas cause a warming of the body and increased heart rate. The brain puts two and two together and says, I should be anxious. Even though the situation doesn't call for it. The only difference between pre-anxiety and post-anxiety is the fact that you smoke the sativa, and sativa shouldn't cause that. It's only causing a few of the symptoms, and it's triggering your brain to say, I should be anxious. After I learned that, I started, you'll see I did a video about my meditation. I changed my meditation as of then, and I got more into the moment I would feel anxiety, regardless of where it came from, I would meditate. But in my meditation, I would think about the situation and think, Is this anxiety real? Am I anxious over something that's real? If I'm anxious only because I smoke something, wash it away, wash it away, wash it away. If I'm anxious over something real, if I haven't just smoked, if that didn't trigger me, something else triggered me. If nothing triggered me, it's the pot and it's not real. If something triggered me, a bad phone call, a letter that tells me another debtor is after me, things like that, those can trigger anxiety. That's fair to have that anxiety. But if you're just sitting there and all of a sudden you're anxious about an issue 2 weeks away, a day away, a month away, or you don't even know why you're anxious, it's not real. You need to start retraining that brain. Only you can do it because it's your brain. And it's interesting. And I'm going to bring up one more reason why I think this is possible. I believe that, I truly believe we don't tap into this enough. The brain is super, super powerful, and we have not even scratched the surface of what it can do. But June 5th, 2003, leading up to that for 2 years, I was getting sicker and sicker. And I was sitting in a hotel room, not a hotel room, a hotel bar with my boss because we were on the road doing some work and having a whiskey. And I was telling him about my pains, and he was saying, you got to go in and get it looked at. So I finally went in and I got a bunch of testing done, and I got called back to the doctors. And on June 5th, 2003, I was given 6 months to 2 years at the outside to live. I had cirrhosis of the liver. A cirrhotic liver does not regenerate. It doesn't fix itself. I saw the pictures from the ultrasound of my liver. It looked ugly. That was a tough, tough time. But it was also a time in my life when then I only had 3 kids, they were just young 20s, just becoming adults. It was not time for dad to go. But I had to go around and make all my arrangements. I had to go around. I went in person to each child and told them what I had found out and everything. And it was a sad, sad time. But I kept positive. I told myself that this isn't right, that I'm going to fix it. I changed my eating. I changed my life. I did not go on any unnatural pills. And for a year and 1/4, every 3 months, I went in for liver function tests, LFTs. Every quarter, they kept saying no change, and I kept feeling a little bit sicker. But I kept doing the liver cleanses, eating well, walking a lot, but mostly a lot of meditation, a lot of visualization in my mind of little blood cells working at my liver and cleaning it up. I didn't have another ultrasound from the first one until 1 year and a quarter in, because after a year and a quarter of same LFTs, same results every time, then all of a sudden, a year and a quarter in, I go in for my tests, and usually he just would phone and say, here's your results. But this time he phoned and said, come back in. We need to rerun the test. So I went back in, they reran the test, and they called me in again. And he told me, all indications are that your liver's starting to function. We need to send you in for an ultrasound because this doesn't make sense. We should not see this drastic a change. So I went in for an ultrasound. My liver was almost pink. It was clean. 3 months later, we went in for more LFTs, and I was almost within normal, and 9 months later, I was totally normal again. I haven't drank since the day I was told. I think I had a little bit of champagne at my wedding, and I had a beer in the bush one time with a friend. But No, I just look after my liver from that point on. But I say it was the visualizations. I say it was the brain telling the body, you have to work harder, you have to do more, because I wasn't ready to go. And the positive attitude and the positive manner and a lot of spiritual backing by my family, I still have a functioning, fully functioning liver. And this was 2003. We're talking 13 years ago almost, that I was not supposed to make it to 2 years. So let your brain talk about your anxiety to you. When you feel anxious, meditate, think, take your time. Is it real? Even if it is real, that's one thing that a lot of people with anxiety, I bet you anything you were a worrywart as a kid. I was. I had ulcers as a kid. I was always worried about something. And I know it never helped me saying it to me as a kid, but it helps me now, is worrying about something doesn't make it any better, but it sure makes it worse, because it makes you incapable of handling it, or less capable. So I'm going to have a cheers with you with some, later in the day, sativa rosin. I'm going to, because I've been battling this and I'm not getting the anxiety I used to get. Let's take Tufi 900 and let's have a toke. Cheers. Mmm. That is really nice. That is really nice. What that is Sweet Island Skunk CBD version from Tilray. Not my favorite place, but not a bad product. Peace and cheers. I hope this helps a little for some people. I hope it can lead you on the path to maybe a better understanding of your own anxiety. Anxiety is gross. It hurts. It's yucky. And have I beat it? No. But do I think that I'm on the road to beating it? I think so. Peace and cheers.